Yeah, Graham's a nice guy.
He's done a great job too on his stuff, man.
He's followed in your footsteps in a lot of ways.
Well, he's different, but I mean, he's good. We like him.
Yeah, Graham's a good dude, and he showed you his investment portfolio.
Oh yeah, that's like a thing he does when he has people on. I'm like, I don't know, Graham. I don't know if I'm qualified to help you with that. Yeah.
You said something to him that massively changed the direction of how we invested. Just
Whoa.
so you know. Yeah.
Whoa.
So I just wanted to share that with you. So I think you had said loosely, well, before I look at this, if this were your brain or your knowledge or your experiences, what percentage of this pie would you say is real estate versus stocks versus anything else? And he said, well, because he had asked you, do you think I'm over-indexed on real estate? But when you asked him the question, he said, well, I mean, I guess probably 85% of my knowledge is around real estate. And I think his portfolio kind of reflected that. You were like, well, then that's a perfect mix for you. And for me, as we were coming out of our liquidity event, we'd probably taken about 40 million home before that.
Wow, good for you. That's awesome.
It's not 300.
It was 300's gross, dude.
I know.
You know the difference in gross and net.
But anyways, and so I had while I was growing the business, I basically just didn't really invest at all. I mean, I just put it in indexes and was like, I'll deal with it later. And then we had the liquidity event, and I talked to probably every guy that I know who was richer than me and was like, what should I do with all this? And the answers that I got were as different as there are people under the sun.
Yep.
Which left me more confused than anything. And so the reason that little piece of advice that you gave to Graham was so meaningful for me was that it was personalized, because everybody told me what they did and what had worked for them. But, one of the guys I asked was like, oh, take all that and buy one huge building. And I was like, I don't know anything about, I was like, I don't want to risk everything on one building. He's like, well, I've been doing this 30 years. Like, that's what you should do. I was like, but I'm going to mess this up.
That scares the crap out of me.
Yeah, I have no idea. Tenants and termites and toilets and all that stuff. I have no idea how any of that stuff works, right? And so when I thought back when I looked at that pie and thought, okay, well, what's my knowledge base? It was like, it's all business. Everything I've done has been business, and all the money I've made has been business. And so I showed that clip to Layla, my wife, and I was like, I think this is what we should do. I think we should just stick to business and just buy businesses and grow them.
Ooh,
and
I love it.
That's what we did with acquisition.com.
Good for you. That's a great, wow.
But that little piece of advice changed the direction of how we allocate all of our assets and what we do, because it's funny, because if I was going to write a $5 million check into a building, I got 3 or 4 deals that were around that size in terms of check size. And I'd get all the way to the end, and I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. And I'm just trusting that this is a good deal. Like I had the Excel sheet and the projector returns and all this stuff, and I was like, I don't feel good about this because I don't know. When on the flip side, if I'm going to write a $5 million check into a business, I feel fine about it, because I'm like, oh, I know how. Like I don't know everything, obviously.
No,
there's a
but
million things you could go wrong.
it's your sandbox,
right?
Yeah.
And so, anyways,
that's beautiful. I love that. That's what happened was we had a product that we called Wealth Coach for a little while. And we ended up doing these very small, but I don't know, we charged more than we ever charged, like $1,000 or something. We always charged $20 to come to this little seminars. And we ended up talking to these people that were millionaires, or 5 million or 10 million. And I kept asking them, okay, what do you put money into? Because they've actually done it. They had money. Like you've actually done it. You have money. And so it's not someone with a theory on TikTok, And so what I kept hearing from them was this array of all kinds of different things. So the answer to the question wasn't a certain investment made them rich. What it was they put money in stuff they knew.
Yeah.
And I mean, one guy was a car dealer, and he had a massive classic car collection, which for an ego-driven person is a horrible idea.
Right.
But because you can lose your butt in any kind of collectible.
Yeah.
But for somebody that is in the car business, and his grandfather had a dealership, and his father had a dealership, and he had he knows that, loves it.
Yeah.
He goes out in the garage and pets the cars. I mean, so guess what? He's making that portfolio seriously gave him a great return. Now, do I recommend to the general public, go get a car? No. No, put money in stuff you understand and you love, and don't put money in stuff because it sounds fancy, or somebody, it sounds sophisticated. Because there's something that happens when you get money. You think that everybody that has money is sophisticated about their investing. And what I figured out was almost no one is.
Yeah.
They're very primitive. I mean, a lot of people I talked to were farmers, and you know what they got? Lots of land. They got dirt, man. That's it. Just dirt. And it doesn't even, I mean, they don't even necessarily plant it, but they just buy dirt. And one guy had 8,000 acres of dirt, you know, and I'm like, God, in Kansas, you know, I'm like, golly, I wouldn't need more dirt, because I don't know anything about that kind of dirt. I like real estate, but that would scare me to death.
Yeah.
But for him, it was the most comfortable, natural thing in the world, to your point. And so I just learned that put money in stuff you love and you understand. Don't put money in stuff because it sounds sophisticated, because you're getting ready to lose your butt, because you're trusting some guy who doesn't have any money, who's trying to sell you something, and driving a bad car. And I won't name the bad car, but anyway, I mean that's where that came from. Was just anecdotally hanging out with those folks and researching it, and it gave me peace, because I was starting to make bank for the first time, and I'm like, I need to be like doing double backflip limited family partnerships or some kind of crap. I don't even know what they are, but I probably ought to be doing one if I'm making this kind of money. And then you talk to a guy and he's like, yeah, you ought to do a double backflip with a twist. And I'm like, yeah, but get right up to it. And I'm going, I don't half understand. No, I think I'd rather just bury it in the backyard than that, because at least I know where it is, you know?
It's funny, though, because even with the dirt example, there was a guy who his entire investment strategy explained in an interview. He was like, you guys are going to be bored about what we're going to do for the next 55 minutes because I can explain it in 5. And we're like, and I'm listening. I'm like, okay, here's it. He's like, okay. So what I do is I find a city and I find the main street, because usually there's a main street that goes through the middle of the state. It's the oldest street, whatever. He's like, and then I take a ruler and I go out 30 miles. He's like, and then I buy all that land. He's like, and then I wait 20 years.
I love this guy.
Yeah. And what are the big...
Any questions?
Yeah. He's like, so what do you want to do with the rest of our time together? They're like, so how do you hedge? He's like, oh, buy it in cash, because you can't take loans on land. And that's what I do. And we've been doing that for many, 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 many years.
I had dinner with a guy the other night that had $2 billion net worth, and he's second gen, but his dad was doing dirt, not unlike what your friend was doing. And then he couldn't get the bank to do the deal. He was borrowing money to do the dirt. And so he bought the bank. It was a little hometown bank, and they screwed with him, and so he bought it. And he's like, okay, now they'll behave. And then he started making money on the bank and got in and got to figure out how banking. And now they own like 15 or 20,000 acres, 3 wineries around the world, and a whole bunch of banks. Bunch of community banks, and they're multi-billionaires. And so, but it started from that, and they don't really do anything else. The wineries are more of a fun project. I think they know what they're doing with those, probably, the way he was talking. He knew wine. And but he knows banks, and he knows dirt. And that's where all their money is. Yeah. And they're not diversified for having as much billions. With an S, I mean, it's interesting. Those kinds of people are enthralling to me.
And it's interesting because most of the billionaires that I have looked at, they usually make their money in 1 or 2 vehicles that they know exceedingly well, where they feel like they have an unfair advantage. And like they get there not because there's a marketplace advantage, but because they have an information advantage. They know it better.
Exactly. And if you go through the Forbes 400, I think it's 67% last time I looked are first gen. They're all billionaires now. You don't qualify if you don't have a B. And they're first gen, and I think I looked at them. Of the first gens, it was 90-something% were business-driven. So it was Michael Dell, Bill Gates, Hobby Lobby, David Green, Chick-fil-A, Truett Cathy, and so they started a business, and it led to either they took it public or they just monetize the crud out of it, and it just has a marketplace valuation. Oprah, but the secret of Oprah's wealth is not her celebrity status; it's the empire she built under the celebrity status. And so, you go down those things like that, and you go, okay, you can get to $1 to $5 million net worth with your 401k and your paid-off home. But mathematically impossible to get to $1 billion in your 401k. It's not possible to do it. So you got to there's other strategies to be involved if you're going to do that.
So I wanted to take a quick second because it'd be hard for me to talk to Dave Ramsey without talking about debt. And a lot of people, so in my audience, I'm kind of debt agnostic. I don't talk much about it. But a lot of people don't know that I actually have no debt either. And so everything I've bought to this point in my life has been cash. Now, I'm not against debt. I just kind of like talk about, when I get right at the edge of something, I end up not doing it. It's been that way with most kind of loan things in general. And I read Total Money Makeover years ago. And you had this line in there about debt that was, I'm going to try and say it back to you as I understood it, because there's obviously the biblical component, but for everyone who might not believe in that, I wanted to give at least my rational understanding of how you see it, which is that debt introduces risk. And risk, when compounded over a long enough time horizon, no matter how big a number you acquire, any number multiplied by 0 is still 0. And so if you know that you're going to be playing this game for a very long time, even a small amount of risk when you're going 200 miles an hour can flip the car. That was my understanding of how you saw debt. Is that accurate? That's how I saw it, or at least I interpreted your view on debt.
Now, that line is actually from Warren Buffett. He in one of his famous annual reports, they're very cheeky and fun to read, and especially the opening paragraphs or so. In one of those, he was talking about in a down year like '08. We soon discover that leverage is not always your friend. That, those of us that could do math realize that any number multiplied by 0 is going to equal 0. And that does that for you. So, it's, again, having grown up in the real estate business, one thing you're going to do in the real estate business when I was growing up, if you said, I'm going to be a real estate investor, they took you to the hospital, they took out your risk meter, and they broke it with a hammer. And they put it back in. You're not allowed to perceive risk if you're going to be a real estate guy, because it's glass half full. We're eternal optimists. Everything's going to work out because real estate's always awesome. It's just awesomeness on parade. You can't mess this up. The renters will pay your rent. Oh God, I'll pay your mortgage. How can you mess this up? And so if a little bit of leverage is good, then a lot of leverage is amazing. and that's how I went broke. I leveraged up to my eyeballs had a bunch of short-term notes, and the bank did the unthinkable and called my notes when they got sold to another bank, and they saw a 26-year-old kid owed them $1.2 million on the 90-day notes doing flips. And this was before Chip and Joanna told us how to do it. And so do a flip. Oh, my God. And we didn't have HG channel to tell us how to fix up a house. Without cable TV, I did this stuff. And so so that's where it came from. And then what happened to me, because I lost everything following the borrow all you can because it works plan, I had to stop and go, I think I've got a bad set of rules. The playbook I've got sucks. I keep losing. And my kids are getting skinny. I mean, this is not working. Right. So when I did that, the first, as you said, the first door I went through was I had just become a Christian, and so I started studying the Bible. And so as a matter of faith, I started reading scriptures, and all the scriptures say negative things about debt. It doesn't say it's a sin. It doesn't say you're going to hell, but it's stuff like the borrower's slave to the lender. You're a fool if you cosign. I mean, it says these things in Scripture. And then you talk to old rich people, and they go, well, you stay out of debt, boy, and okay, that's kind of God's and grandma's ways of doing it. So what did I miss in academia when I fell in love with leverage from an academic viewpoint? Because it's incongruent to me that if this book of wisdom and these people that are long in the tooth with gray hair that have proof, social proof, they've got money and they kept it, are all saying avoid debt. What is it that we're missing in academic land with my intellect? So spiritual, social proof, now I got to solve it intellectually. And what I ended up doing, I ended up speaking at Vanderbilt to a group of MBAs early in my career, and it forced me to, because I knew I was going to go in there and get tackled, right? Because they're going to go, you're primitive moron, you believe the Bible, you don't know anything, and you don't know how to do math. And I know how to do math. As a matter of fact, it's about all I know how to do. I'm a math guy. So what I figured out was that in business debt or real estate debt, business is not publicly traded. No one includes all the math. They leave out a risk factor associated with debt mathematically. And so we look at a very inaccurate and primitive measure of leverage. And so if I can borrow this money at 2% and I can invest it at 8, why am I not making 6? Well, A, you left out inflation. B, you left out taxes. But aside from that, and that's pretty basic because this is the argument. It's that it is that the argument is that primitive.
Right.
But you did not adjust for the risk you took on. Because I think we can all agree if you have a business that's doing $10 million top line and you've got $12 million in debt, you have a lot more risk than if you had $2 million in debt. Mm-hmm. And even $2 million is more risk than if you had zero debt. Mm-hmm. We can agree that debt is equal to risk. Mm-hmm. And if we can agree to that, then we ought to be able to assign, if we're going to really get down in the analytical jungle, we can assign a mathematical formula to that. Well, ta-da, there is one. It already exists. We just never applied it in that. In the investment world, they teach us to adjust. You don't compare an aggressive growth stock mutual fund that has a high peaks and valleys on the graph, volatile, with a growth and income fund, which has almost no peaks and valleys. So a growth and income fund may have a beta of a 0.8, meaning it is only 80% as risky as the S&P. When you're comparing it to an aggressive growth stock mutual fund that might have a 2.0, meaning it's twice as volatile, risky. And so in that world, we're taught, I mean, one of the first things you learn doing financial analysis in that world is you use the beta as an inverse in the math, and you flip it on its head, and you multiply it through, and you adjust for risk mathematically. So that you can then say, after you adjust for the volatility, the 0.8 versus the 2.0 versus the S&P is a 1.0, it's your baseline. When you adjust for that risk, the perceived return of the aggressive growth stock mutual fund at 20% rate of return, where the other one's making 11.2, it goes away. It neutralizes it. And you might end up with risk adjusted, that 11.2 will come up, and the 20% will come down, risk adjusted, and then you can actually compare apples to apples. But you've risk adjusted for the volatility and mathematically. We don't do that in business.
Right.
We just go, oh, I want to buy a bulldozer. Let's go get $50,000 at the bank.
Yeah.
And I think I can do it. I think we can push some dirt. And that is your risk analysis. Well, kiss my butt. That is dumb, okay? And people do that all the time. And so what I determined is that I'm going to go, if you want to compare two dry cleaners, one has debt, one doesn't, I've got to risk adjust for that mathematically, and you have to apply a beta formula to that. I presented that to this group of MBAs, and they're all sitting there with their jaws on their lap going, no one ever said that. And I said, it's because it's never been said. No one does it in the world. No one does. No, you're not trained this way. You're trained that way in only one bucket of finance. All the other buckets of finance, zero real estate people do this. Zero. None. They do not analyze risk. And so if you take risk out, then unlimited leverage is logical. But if you say unlimited leverage, they go, oh, not quite. Maybe 80%, maybe a 70%, maybe a LTV, right? And, but if you push them up to the edge, they can actually feel it a little bit because there's a remnant of a risk meter in there, but it just doesn't function anymore. That's where that came from.
No, I love it.
Probably more than you wanted, but
No, I wanted to kind of hear your take on it, and because obviously, in the business acquisition world, there's also debt that's factored in. Now we've done all cash deals up to this point, but I wanted to just kind of hear your take on it. And I quote Warren Buffett a lot. He's a big
But even in the publicly traded realm, we were taught and still taught, bonds are debt. And so if you're looking at a company with publicly traded stock, it has a heavy bond weight. You discount the P/E. You don't compare that stock apples to apples with a company that has no bond rate, zero bonds. They have zero debt. They don't have bank debt. They don't have short-term debt. They're sitting over there debt-free. You would give them some benefit on their stock analysis mathematically. We're taught to do that. But again, it does not transfer from the mutual fund world or the publicly traded world to the real estate world or the
small business world.
Small business, privately held businesses don't even. I mean, I know people that do have $1 billion top line, and honestly, they don't even look at. A lot of them just don't borrow money. They don't even know why they don't borrow money. They just don't borrow money because somebody told them to one time, and they go, "I like not being in debt. I can sleep better." and that's their entire analysis. You know, me, I've got analysis, and I can do the country boy thing too and say, I just sleep better. Bring on a pandemic. I got cash.
Yeah. I'll bring us home because I had and I could talk to you all day. And I appreciate you taking the time to talk to me and the audience of the game.
I've been honored. It's fun conversation.
If you had advice that you could, and I'll keep it specific to business advice, that you could give 40-year-old Dave, what would you tell him then that like now that you didn't know then?
Play incremental long ball. Don't look for the home run. I keep waiting for somebody to call me and for this to get easy. One phone call and it's all over. And it's like, oh, now I don't have to think about it anymore. Someone else is going to do it for me. It's all automatic. It's never going to be automatic. It's never going to be easy. It's a hustle and grind. It's a claw. You're going to make a bazillion mistakes. Make mistakes that are experiments that you survive. You put out a hypothesis, you survive the experiment, to live another day to have another experiment. Put out another hypothesis, another product that fails, another idea that fails. And our failures at Ramsey are in number and in money are way greater than our successes. The only thing is we survived them. A, we didn't have debt, and B, we never bet the farm on one horse. And so from a diversification standpoint, we never pushed all the chips to the middle of the table on one hand. And so we're not looking for the singular home run. We're looking to survive and fight another day and keep iterating. And the culmination of that, the accumulated value of those iterations are what we call the gleaming mountain of success, which turns out as a pile of garbage and mistakes that you're just standing on rather than laying under it.
I love that. One of the sayings that we have in our community is 100 golden BBs, no silver bullets.
There you go. That's the one. That's exactly, you beat me to you. That's much better than mine. I would have just gone with that. No. It's the same thing. I keep waiting on the phone call, but I mean, it's never, I've had a couple of them I thought was it, and then I was, found out they were just people and they weren't magic.
Well, it's funny because I joke with our community because a lot of my community is small business owners, probably, from $100,000 a year to $100 million a year is probably like the broad brushstroke of the people who are listening to this. And the biggest thing a lot of them suffer from is, shiny object syndrome, is that as soon as something starts to get hard, something new looks easy. And so they jump from the hard thing to the easy thing. And really it's just uninformed optimism. And then they get into it and then they have informed pessimism.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. Yeah. I mean, by the time it shines, you're late. You're late. It's too late. I mean, if you think TikTok is new, you're late.
Yeah.
It's already not new. It may have already turned down while we were talking right now.
Well, I mean, if we have a second, let me know. In terms of how, because you've survived is a strong word. You've thrived, platform agnostic. You were in radio, you've done live stuff, but then I see YouTube clips of your show pumping out every day. You guys crush it on YouTube, and you do it kind of your way. How have you thought about navigating platforms as they come and go, and how you kind of like reinvest in where are we going to make a bet and say, okay, we're going to start expending resources here? Or is it just, if there's attention, we'll go there? Like, how do you think through that?
We try to go there, and then we expend resources based on results. And so the YouTube Shorts that we've been pumping out is only about 1.5 years old, and we're getting incredible results. Yeah. But we're getting results on those, as an example. We don't view those as life transformation items.
Okay.
We view them as lead magnets to lead you to the long-form show, to Financial Peace University, to a book, which are life transformation items. So they're free advertisements that cause people to get a little sample. You get a little old lady standing in Costco with a sample biscuit, right? And so you get a little sample, and get a little sample biscuit, and then you may go buy the whole thing in the freezer. But I would not do, in other words, our philosophy on changing lives is why we're here. We would not only do YouTube Shorts because they don't change lives. Mm-hmm. Okay. We would not only do the new long-form TikTok, 6 minutes, 7 minutes. We would not only do that because it won't change a life. And so it's got to lead us somewhere. And based on its response on doing that or just general activity around whatever the item is, whether it's a long form or short form, we're gonna pour gas on where we're seeing stuff work. And so we don't, for the last 2 years we put little to no effort in growing Twitter. Mm-hmm. Tucker Carlson might change that. It may become a broadcast medium. Mm-hmm. And so we'll probably be on Twitter next week.
Well, Elon's definitely pushing it.
Elon, and he's going to, but I mean, if it's not going to just be a cauldron for trolls, then and it's actually going to put out some positive information in a way that is consumable and could grow. And if Elon proves that with Tucker, I mean, we'll jump in there and try it right now. And all that is, we're not going to put a ton of money on it or resources or bandwidth on it, but this week we were discussing we're probably going to try it, and what Tucker's doing and what Elon's doing with Tucker and with that whole idea of broadcasting there, because Facebook Live didn't work. I mean, it's not working.
No, not anymore.
Not from our perspective anyway. But we're still there. We didn't abandon it, but we're not putting effort on it. Where YouTube Shorts, we got a lot of people in this building working on that every day. Yeah,
you guys crank those.
Yeah, they do. They put out a bunch of them.
When you think about content for you, because you're recording 12 hours a week, correct? 4 days, 3 hours a day. Oh, 15 hours. Okay.
Well, counting commercials. Yeah, we do 3-hour talk radio show every day. 5 days a week.
And is that the entirety of your kind of content creation, and then the teams take all of that and disseminate it through all the channels?
I do a podcast that I just took over that's caller-driven on leadership and small business called Entree Leadership. I took that over in January. That and the Ramsey Show are the only two things I'm on. Mm-hmm. But Ramsey Network has about 10 shows that are YouTube and or radio and or, I mean, we put them on everything. But, I mean, the Ken Coleman Show is the only one that's on talk radio, 75 stations, plus podcast, plus YouTube. Dr. John Deloney has a huge show on podcast and YouTube only. The Rachel Cruz with George Camel, the Smart Money Happy Hours. But we sawdust every one of those. Every one of those can.
When you say sawdust,
we're going to take pieces and clips and do all kinds of things with them. Instead of, we don't go create. I say very seldom do we go create a YouTube short of anyone in the building or anything in the building. It is clipped from something we were already doing, so it's repurposed content that was already developed for something else. Highly edited.
Yeah, I mean, because I've observed what you're doing and thinking like, how can we do even more of that kind of stuff?
Lots of payroll.
Our media is. All right. Well, this has been phenomenal, and I'm honestly just so grateful that they had me and my team out here to. Is this considered Ramsey Studios? Is that what this would?
We call it that. Ramsey Solution Studios. Yeah.
And just also so grateful for that one tiny tidbit that.
Wow, I'm honored I had a tiny bit to do with all that you do, man. You're amazing. I'm proud of you. Well done.
That means a lot. I appreciate it. Well, thanks so much for coming on the game.
Thank you, brother.
Hopefully something in the future.
Absolutely. You can count on it.